Welcome to Why Shingo, an overview. This is a short overview of the Shingo Model, the Shingo Prize, maybe a little bit about GBMP, and my experience with Lean and the Shingo Institute, the Shingo Prize. So my name is Dan Fleming. I work for GBMP. GBMP is a licensed affiliate of the Shingo Institute. And I am a certified Shingo Institute Facilitator, a Shingo Prize examiner. This is a short overview. One slide on who GBMP is, and then I'll delve into the Shingo material. GBMP is a small nonprofit mission-based organization. We're based in Boston or New England. I'm currently in Newton, Massachusetts, and we have a small audience here in the room, but a much larger live streaming audience. So thank you for being here. But we're a small mission-based organization. Our whole mission is to help companies strengthen their business, to keep good jobs here in New England, to keep good jobs here in the US, to prevent sort of the downsizing, the cost cutting, and the outsourcing that companies go through when they struggle. So we provide hands-on workplace improvement, both coaching, mentoring. GBMP does 4 primary things. We do training, Lean and Six Sigma training. We teach the Shingo Institute courses. Our training is both public and private. We have some Lean videos and games, a workbook. Some of these Lean videos and games I'm sure you're familiar with. Some of them have been a recipient of the Shingo Prize. We have an annual conference. Our conference is coming up in October. It's our 14th annual conference here in New England. And the 4th thing we do is straight project work. We help companies implement their continuous improvement system, help them with their understanding, help them with specific projects. So let's talk a little bit about how the Shingo principles align with my background, my experience with both Lean and Toyota Production System and Shingo himself. So the system has 3 major sections to it. And this is from my background way back in early 1987, 1986. This model has been around for a long time. It's the model of the Toyota Production System. There are tools and techniques, the technical part, that provide the means to make improvement. Without these, teams struggle, individuals struggle. So the tools are important, they provide the means. They're countermeasures to close the gap between where you currently are and where you'd like to be, your ideal. They're guided by principles, and the Toyota Production System had 4 original principles. The Shingo Institute has expanded those 4 original principles into 10 principles in 4 different categories. I'm going to cover this in greater detail as we move forward. And the other part is management's role. So these 3 parts of the system are like 3 legs of a tripod, 3 legs of a wooden stool. The system requires all 3. Right? The wooden stool, the tripod doesn't stand on just 2 legs. You have to do all 3. So in general, there are tools that are guided by principles and supported by management. So this particular overlapping piece shows how the principles are connected to both the technical part and how the principles are connected to management's role. So management has an important role. There's the technical science and there's the social science. The philosophies or the guiding principles help us select the proper tools. They help us understand what tools to select in order to close that gap between current and ideal. The tools also help us determine the social side, the people side, or the behavioral side. So there's an overlapping part where the principles are connected to both the technical side and the social side. So management's job is to work on the organizational strategy, the organization itself, systems to achieve ideal results, systems that enable the tools to thrive. But we select those systems based on the principles. So the technical side and the social side has always been a part of continuous improvement. The technical part is really important. Without it, people struggle. When I first learned about the social science or the social side years ago, coworkers of mine would call these the soft skills or fluff. And when I heard the term soft skills, I understood why they said that, because these are hard technical tools. When I heard the term fluff, it seemed a bit cynical to me. but I ignored it. It was one of those bells that went off in my head. Over time, I've come to realize that the social side, the behavioral, or the people side, it's not fluff. It's not soft skills. It's the wrong word for it. It's a really important part of the whole thing and a key to the whole system. It creates the mindset, the behavior, the culture, which is really important. Having said that, we can't lose sight of the technical side as well. The tools are important. They do provide the means, and we do need lots of experience with the tools and techniques. We need to learn them deeply. They are all grounded in principles. They're guiding principles. They put the system in proper context. So in short, there are tools that are guided by principles that are supported by management and supported by management systems. So if I back up a little bit further, let's talk a bit about Shingo, a bit about the prize, a bit about the institute. So Shingo is a famous consultant to Toyota, and you probably know that. He was instrumental in designing the Toyota production system. He was a consultant to Toyota. He didn't actually work at Toyota. He worked for Mr. Taiichi Ohno. Mr. Ohno and Dr. Shingo developed the Toyota production system. Mr. Ohno allowed Shingo to practice or to prove out his ideas within Toyota's facilities. But he trained thousands of managers and others on his ideas, his principles, his management systems, and his thinking. So Dr. Shingo was instrumental in designing the Toyota production system. All of his principles and teachings originated in manufacturing, but now has been expanded and studied and implemented in many other industries, like healthcare and government and banking and service. So lots of organizations are now learning the Shingo principles, the Shingo system. It's not a manufacturing only system. Shingo wrote 18 books, and only 8 of them have been converted into English. The 6 more popular ones are here. But there are 8 books. I think the 8th one was a Shingo's Sayings book, which is actually a really good, interesting book. Whenever you're feeling down, you can read Shingo's sayings, and his sayings are also interesting, but also kind of brings you up a little bit. But this is the original book that Shingo wrote, A Guide to the Toyota Production System. Actually, all of his books are probably the originals, and I recommend reading them. This is Shingo's book on zero quality control, source inspection, and the poka-yoke system. So zero quality control means zero need for inspection because of mistake proofing or poka-yoke devices. So for those of you that already know the Shingo principles, this book is geared towards assure quality at the source. Famous book of Shingo's. The white book is Shingo's book on single-minute exchange of die or quick changeover. One of the first projects that Shingo worked on at Toyota was to help them with changeovers. The goal was to reduce changeover time by 50%. Shingo reduced it by much greater than 50%. He set the goal for changeover at 59/60ths. So changeovers that were done in 1 hour could be done in minutes, and maybe even 1 minute in his mind. Changeovers done in 2 hours could be done in 2 minutes. These 2 books are extremely famous books of Shingo's. Now, quick changeover, single-minute exchange of die, originally developed for equipment, of course can still be used for equipment to become more flexible, to get on to the next customer order. Certainly can be used in healthcare as well. So healthcare has changeover both of equipment, but rooms. So improving patient flow, improving the patient experience includes changeover to free up resources, whether it be ED resources, whether it be OR resources, or just an inpatient room. So improving patient flow, changing over rooms is obviously very important. And this original thinking and changeover for equipment can be used in rooms. So famous consultant to Toyota and many other industries. The Shingo Institute is housed at the John M. Hausman School of Business at Utah State University. It's the home of the Shingo Prize, and it's also the home of the Shingo Institute, where the educational material has been developed. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the prize. I'm also going to talk about the Shingo material, the Shingo model, and the educational material. So briefly about the prize, we're going to talk mostly about the model, the principles. So in 1988, the prize was originally developed. So Shingo was given an honorary doctorate degree at Utah State University. He spoke at a conference, and they named a prize in his honor. At the time, he was interested in kind of furthering his learning. He was late in life. He wanted to leave a legacy. So the prize was created in his name. In 1989, the first prize was awarded. I was at a company here in Massachusetts that challenged for the prize in 1989, actually. And we were a finalist, not a recipient. In 1990, we challenged for the prize the second time, and we became a recipient of the prize. So I've been a fan of Dr. Shingo. I've been a fan of the Shingo model since the late 80s, the early 90s. It was an interesting time for me. This is Dr. Shingo visiting the company I worked at here in Massachusetts. He's traveling through the shop floor. He's in a wheelchair. He's very old and frail. His mind was still very sharp, though. It was an exciting visit. People came to the alleyway and shook Dr. Shingo's hand. Many of them got a photo, got an autograph, got a book signed. I was not smart enough to do that. I certainly knew enough about Shingo, but I did not run up and get a photo or an autograph or a book signed, but many others did. But it was an exciting time for us. This is in 1990. He died about 6 months later, but a really exciting time for us. Because of the prize, we obviously had a system in place, but it motivated us to do more. It also acknowledged that what we were doing, we were on the right path. After the prize, we continued on the path of continuous improvement. It brought this little Massachusetts company exposure. Everybody wanted to come see what we were doing. We were giving tours almost every day to large organizations, small, some local, some from far away. But giving tours of what we were calling the Toyota production system forced me to be able to articulate what it was and what we did and what we were going to do next. It also helped us reflect a bit. As a young engineer, a young manager, I was always frustrated by the lack of progress or how much work there was still to be done and how slow things were going. The prize, the tours, and people acknowledging what we had done up until that point actually was a really good reflection to say to me and others, we actually have done a lot and we should celebrate those successes. All through the 90s, the company I worked at continued to get world class. The first version of the model was developed in 1993. In 2000, Business Week magazine referred to the prize as the Nobel Prize for Manufacturing. The prize has changed from being a North American prize to being an international prize. So in 2008, the Institute went through a major reflection or a major study period. And a lot of changes happened around 2008. Shingo, when he spoke about a prize, didn't want just a single prize, a recipient or a finalist. He liked the idea of progression because obviously improvement is continuous. But it wasn't until 2008 that the bronze and silver medallions were created. The bronze medallion recognizes organizations that are getting started, that are beginning to change things, cultures beginning to be developed, more of a tools focus, but it's certainly recognizing some early success. The silver medallion is something that's a bit more value stream, a bit more integrative, a bit broader, but more system development, more cultural change. And the third level is the Shingo Prize. So in 2008, multiple levels were created. And I'll talk more about the point system. The first prize outside of North America was awarded, so it became an international prize and not just manufacturing. So business excellence, enterprise excellence, operational excellence prize. But the biggest change that happened in 2008 wasn't necessarily the bronze and silver medallion or the fact that it became a broader prize than just a manufacturing prize, was the model itself, which is what I'm introducing today. The Shingo Institute went through a deep study, an analysis of the model, and they raised the bar on what they were trying to accomplish. Originally, up until that point, examiners tended to focus on the tools, and they saw culture, but they focused on tools and maybe a programmatic assessment of the company's application of those tools. Over time, the prize and the examiners are now focusing on culture. We're examining or assessing an organization's level of culture, understanding of culture, or culture and understanding of the principles. So we examine and we assess a leader's understanding of principles and a leader's ability to develop others, to create that culture that's aligned with the principles. We assess a manager's understanding of the principles and their development of systems that are aligned with the principles. And we also examine associates' understanding of principles, but also their application of tools to help get the desired result. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. So these are recent recipients of the Shingo Prize. The Shingo Prize is the best example of how to assess an organization's culture and their ability to create a long-term sustained program. What we're taught is to look for organizations that we feel like are more flavor of the month that may not sustain long-term. The cultural aspect and the behavioral aspect focus of the model is assessing whether an organization is going to have a long-term sustained program, which I'll talk more about. These are recent recipients. You can see there's lots that are outside of North America, outside of the US, but certainly there's been a fair amount of US recipients as well. So if you go to shingoprize.org, you can read case studies of recipients over the past several years. But some are from outside the US, some are from inside the US. But a significant accomplishment for all of these organizations. So to challenge for the prize, it's a multi-step process. We get asked all the time, when should an organization challenge for the prize? The company I worked at, I was fortunate enough to be at a company in 1987, 1986. There was doing continuous improvement. But 1987 was company-wide. 3 years into their company-wide effort, 1990, is when they were acknowledged or became a recipient. So it takes approximately 3 years, but it's different depending on the organization. Some organizations might take 3 years, some organizations might take longer. One reason it's at least 3 years is that the Shingo Institute, the prize, requires multi-years of results, so 3 years of results at a minimum. One of the reasons the company I worked at was not a recipient in 1989 was because we did not have 3 years of results, enough years of results to see if it was going to be a long-term program, sustained program. But it takes approximately 3 years. The first step is to submit a letter, fill out an application of your intent to apply. So it's giving the information that we're intending to apply. You're provided with information on what it means to apply. So it's an early intent to apply, and you might do that well before you actually consider a challenge for the prize. The achievement report is approximately 50-page written report about how the organization aligns with principles, systems, and tools. So it touches on all the principles I'm going to cover today and how the company has understood and adopted them. So the achievement report gets submitted and it gets reviewed by a team of examiners. So it's a desktop review. I've done some desktop reviews. So one of the first major toll gates for someone interested in challenging is to have it be scored by an examiner, and examiners decide whether a site visit is worthy or not. Most cases a site visit is worthy, in some cases they're not. So if you get by this toll gate, there's a site visit. It could be an examining team of 4. It could be larger if it's a large organization. Ideally, there'd be at least one person from the desktop reviewer that's on the site visit team. But it does not have to be all 4 of them. It can certainly be 3 or more different ones. So during the site visit, they're obviously looking for evidence that was written in the report, but they're also looking at things that have changed from the report, but they're examining the culture of the organization, the understanding at a leader, manager, associate level. So there's 3 levels for the prize. There's a bronze level. It's a 1,000-point scale. Bronze level starts at 575. Silver starts at 675. And the Shingo Prize has 775 and up. So a little bit more about the model and that turning point from 2008. As I mentioned, the Shingo Institute went through a deep reflection, a deep period of trying to understand what's the missing ingredient, what's the ingredient in successful organizations. Some organizations are fast out of the gate but slip away rather quickly. But some organizations have a long-term sustained program. So how is it that some organizations can have a long-term sustained program and others actually start and eventually fail? And that's where the model started to change. So what the Shingo Institute found was organizations that had long-term sustained success had a much deeper understanding of the principles. On the left-hand side of this bridge, so the bridge analogy is something we cover in the initial Discover Excellence class. And it shows that all organizations are trying to get across this bridge. Across the bridge represents long-term sustained program. But many of us start and fail. We never get across that bridge. We have multiple cycles of tools geared towards key performance indicators. And we get results using tools. But it's difficult. A lot of starts and stops, a lot of sort of backtracking. But there are other organizations that actually succeed in getting across this bridge and stay or continue with a long-term sustained program. So while we always taught the principles or the philosophies as part of the Toyota production system, what the Shingo Institute found was that what's necessary for a long-term sustained program is not just an understanding of tools and systems, but a deep understanding of principles, therefore behavior changes. Intellectually, people can understand these principles because some of them are pretty straightforward. Respect every individual, for example. People understand that, and there's certainly more to talk about that particular principle. But with all the principles, what is required is a very deep understanding of the principles in order for it to impact behavior. Right? Intellectually, people get it, but what causes people to actually change the behavior is something that derives from emotion, something that derives from here. And the common ingredient in organizations that succeeded was a very deep understanding of the principles, therefore they behave differently. And the culture started to change. So KPIs are important. Tools can drive KPI, key performance indicators. But what's equally important, even more important, are principles that drive key behavioral indicators. So in the base material in the Discover Excellence class, we start early describing the model. But one of the first questions we ask is, why do organizations exist? Now there's lots of reasons why organizations exist. Typically it's about customer, it's about providing a service, providing some sort of value to society. But eventually an answer comes out that organizations exist to deliver results. They certainly are there to serve a customer, to provide a service, certainly to provide shareholder value. But the end is results. So the model, the Shingo model, has components in it, tools and systems. We use those to deliver results. It's always been a part of the model. Tools and techniques that are guided by management systems, or systems have been aligned that also deliver results. And what is a tool? A tool is a single device. A tool might be something I use to do the job that I do every day, but it also is used to improve the work I do. So this could be tools to do the work, but also tools to improve the work. Systems are a collection of tools, or a system, something like a management system to support the work that we do to deliver KPIs, but also the improvement work that we do. So we use systems and tools obviously to deliver to get the results we're trying to achieve, whether it be the work that we do or the improvement work we do. But who builds systems and tools? It's people. You know, what's missing from this particular model? It's people. So what is it about people? It's their sort of behavior, and it also is the culture. So in the Discover Excellence class, we define what behavior is, we define what culture is. So behavior is something you can see with your own eyes. It's observable, describable, recordable. It's not a thought, it's not thinking a certain way. It's acting a certain way. And what causes people to behave is what they believe in, their values, their principles, how they were brought up, certainly. Culture is defined as sort of the sum total of everyone's behaviors. So as examiners, we're taught to try to understand the behavior, try to see behavior, to not be dazzled by an artifact being a continuous improvement technique, to actually look a little bit deeper to understand the behavior around that artifact and to try to determine the culture of the organization. So people obviously build systems and tools. So in the Discover Excellence class, we talk about trying to understand the behavior, or predicting behaviors. So every organization has a culture. Whether we know it or not, there's a culture there. Whether we are managing that culture in some organizations or in other organizations, it's kind of managing us. So we spend time talking about what would the behaviors of these types of cultures look like. A power hungry, a fear, a survival, a firefighting. There's three obviously that are more traditional, four that are more traditional. And we list the traits of the behaviors in a culture that you might define as power hungry, fearful, survival, firefighting. We also try to list the behaviors you might expect to see if the culture could be defined as humble or humility, innovative, respectful, trusting, and collaborative. So two very different cultures, but the behavior obviously is very, very different. So there's a culture in the organization, whether we understand it or not. So who are the people that make up the culture? There's three different groups. The Shingo Institute tries to understand their roles in developing culture. Leaders are a senior leadership team. Managers, middle management, and maybe sometimes first-line supervision. And associates, could be staff, it could be operators, it could be team members. Shingo Institute's, Shingo calls them associates. Shop floor employees, those that are sort of doing the value-added work. But when you think of culture or behavior, can they all influence the culture? And the answer is yes, they can influence culture. But which group has the bigger ability to impact culture? Is it shop floor associates? Is it managers? Is it leaders? Now, typically it's leaders. Leaders have a much greater ability to impact culture of the organization. Now, shop floor associates certainly can impact culture. You have an influential person on the shop floor, but they don't tend to have the same power that obviously a leader does. You might think of it as a ×3 ability to impact culture at a leadership level. Certainly there's less leaders, senior leaders, but they have a much greater ability to impact. Maybe it's a ×10 ability to impact culture. But if I use a ×3 and a ×2 for managers, associates maybe a ×1. So in an organization, leaders have the biggest ability to impact culture. But where do you think leaders spend most of their time? Leaders spend most of their time delivering results, actually. Leaders are paid to deliver results. They're measured on delivering results. They enter an organization and they want to make an impact very, very quickly. Their bonus might be tied to delivering results. So while they have the biggest ability to impact culture, they're actually not working on culture. They're actually working on results. It's no wonder why organizations are not doing well with culture, because nobody really owns it. It's owned by whomever. So leaders tend to focus most of the time, obviously, on results. So there's 3 insights to enterprise excellence. The insights provide further insight into the principles, the systems, the beliefs, the purpose. So the first insight to enterprise excellence, or the first insight to the overall Shingo model, it's like a hint, a major hint, that ideal results, which is what we're all trying to achieve, requires ideal behavior. Long-term ideal results requires long-term ideal behavior. Organizations can achieve short-term results with bad behavior, actually. Right? So organizations do it all the time. Bad behavior to get good results. The problem with bad behavior getting good results, obviously, is it's not sustainable. It's not for the long term. Organizations are great at the short term, getting those orders out by Friday, getting those orders out by the end of the month or the big end of the quarter, pressuring suppliers, adding more work to the floor, asking people to hurry up. So bad behavior can deliver ideal results, but only in the short term. It creates the wrong culture. So if we're looking for long-term ideal results, it requires ideal behavior. The second insight is that our beliefs, the organizational, our purpose to exist as an organization, or our purpose in life, and the systems we develop within an organization drive behavior. Right? Systems drive behavior. There are systems to do the core business, and there are systems to improve the business. So we need to develop systems to drive the right behavior, obviously. We need to have an overall purpose to why we exist as an organization to drive the right behavior. And certainly we need beliefs to drive the right behavior. And the third insight is that principles, a deep understanding of principles, is what informs the ideal behavior. It guides us towards the ideal behavior. It tells us if our ideal behavior is proper or not. So this is the complete model here, along with the 3 insights. And in all the courses, which I'll show you the 5 different Shingo Institute courses in a moment, all the courses we touch on the model. We touch on the insights. We cover the principles, which I'm going to cover next. So the guiding principles help us understand if our behavior is proper. They help us select the right tools. They help us inform the right behavior. Systems also drive behavior. And obviously the purpose is to have long-term sustainable results. But the guiding principles help us align our systems. So all of our systems need to be pegged to the guiding principles. So it's management's job to understand systems and how they match up towards the guiding principles. Tools help us deliver results, of course, but principles can help us select the right tools. In the end, it's about the culture and the behavior that makes this whole system work. It's about people development. So what are the principles? Or what are principles in general? So they're foundational rules. Principles typically can't be created. They certainly can be discovered. A good example is gravity. So gravity was discovered. It's a principle that we live by. At some point, people did not know necessarily about gravity, but they found out pretty quickly what gravity was. So my point to the comment about gravity is that it's a principle that there are consequences, obviously, of understanding that principle. If we understand it, we will not step off the building or not step off the mountaintop. But there are consequences of understanding that principle. Obviously, we can be protected or kept safe. So the principles in the Shingo model are much the same. They're universal and timeless. They apply everywhere, in all walks of life, all the time, always. So they're universal, they're timeless, they'll be here after we leave. Now, some of the principles are easier to peg to these elements here, these components here. For example, respect every individual. It's pretty easy to determine that it's universal and timeless and self-evident or somewhat obvious, and certainly that would govern consequences. If we respect every individual versus if we don't, there are consequences to that. So the principles kind of fall into these sort of categories of universal, timeless, self-evident, but in the end, they govern consequences. So the 4 original principles or philosophies of the Toyota production system have been put into 4 different categories by the Shingo Institute. So here's the model. Here's the guiding principles expanded. Cultural enablers. Are we enabling the right environment for people? So there's two principles under cultural enablers that I'm going to cover. They tend to be people. There's 5 principles under continuous improvement. It's process specific. Enterprise alignment is all about why we exist as an organization. Where are we headed? How are we going to get there? And the last category is results or performance. So people, process, purpose, and performance. So there are 10 principles spread into 4 dimensions or categories. As an examiner, it's very difficult to separate these from each other. So I know there's a little white line there, but when you're actually looking at any one of these, if you're looking at the continuous improvement tools, systems, and trying to understand if they understand the principles, it's hard to eliminate or ignore the cultural enablers. If you're looking at enterprise alignment, purpose, mission, means to achieve the mission, it's hard to ignore some of these other principles. So we tend to focus in certain areas, but it's hard to separate all of them. But there are 4 different categories, 10 different principles. I'm going to cover the 10 principles rather briefly. I've got a couple of videos to cover as well. So this is the triangle. These are the 10 principles spread into the 4 different categories. In all the classes, we spend a fair amount of time trying to understand these. So people, process, purpose, and results. Now, one thing to understand is that this is the why behind continuous improvement. For example, in this category here of improvement, the Shingo Institute does not teach the tools and techniques. They teach the why behind the tools and techniques. Right? Tools and techniques are specific things. This is why we need the tools and techniques. So the model, the full model, and certainly the principles sit underneath your continuous improvement program. It becomes the missing ingredient. It holds it up as important. So I'm going to cover each principle rather briefly, and I've got a few short videos to share of some of these principles in action. So the lowest category, the first category, not lowest, it's actually the most important category. As an examiner, we can certainly score all 4 levels, but a low score in cultural enablers kind of guarantees not being a recipient of a prize. But there are 2 principles under cultural enablers, one of which is pretty obvious, respect every individual. The second is lead with humility. So leaders need to understand these principles deeply, and they need to help create the culture that honors those 2 principles, including as well as the rest. Managers need to align systems or develop systems that respect every individual, that lead with humility. And associates need to use tools and techniques, obviously. So respect every individual. Continuous improvement is meant to be very inclusive. One of the mottos at GBMP, as you know, is everybody, every day. So in continuous improvement, we tend to have thinkers and doers, a small percentage at the top that do all the problem solving, all the creative stuff, and everyone else just works here. Most organizations have way too many problems and way too few problem solvers because we pick and choose who's a problem solver. In our home life, people are more equal. We're all problem solvers, we're all creative, we're all leaders. But when we come to the workplace, we tend to put people in classes, thinkers and doers. And Lean aims to change that. Continuous improvement aims to change that. People do care. People don't want to deal with headaches and frustration in their job. They'd like to be engaged in making improvements if they're allowed to, if they're encouraged to, if they were given time for. So continuous improvement is supposed to have a high respect for people at all levels of the business, not just management. Organizations tend to overvalue certain roles and undervalue others. Why is that? Whole groups are not included in the conversation. So what systems can we develop that respect every individual? individuals at all levels of the business. It could be an idea program, a problem solving, an employee engagement, allowing employees time to do training, a really good safety program. There are many systems that can be put in place to help us respect every individual. So as examiners, we're trying to see if there's the right behavior in terms of respect every individual or disrespect. Lead with humility is a bit tougher for organizations to understand. Lead with humility is all of us, but it tends to be more management. Lead with humility means that I don't have all the answers, that I actually need to learn myself, along with staff or associates. It takes a certain amount of confidence for a manager to say that their department needs improvement. Right? Initially, it's my department doesn't need improvement. I don't have any problems in my department. All my problems are caused by someone else. We need to go fix them. So to open up a department to the idea of improvement takes a certain amount of humility to do it. Confidence and skill to say, yes, we need to improve. We have lots of problems. We need to spend time on improvement. I myself can learn. So they're pretty straightforward, respect every individual and lead with humility. As examiners, we ask managers, how have you educated yourself? What books have you read? Have you visited anybody that's been successful? What conferences have you attended? One last comment about lead with humility, and then I'm going to show a short video, an example of both respect every individual and lead with humility. But one last comment about the two. When someone has a problem, where do they typically go for help? Now, they might go to a respected peer, somebody who's been here longer than I have, but we generally go for help to the manager. So an associate might go to the supervisor. Supervisor might go to the manager. Manager might go to the director for help. Director might go to the VP. VP might go to the president. President might go to the board of directors. So we tend to go upwards when we need help. Occasionally, of course, we go to a trusted peer. Maybe we go there first. But when do we ever go in the opposite direction? Do we ever ask shop floor associates for help with a production problem? Now, of course, a shop floor associate is not necessarily going to help with a question on a merger or where to invest, but I'm talking about things that they actually could contribute. We're not asking shop floor associates, right? We're asking peers, we're asking leadership. So an organization that leads with humility, or an individual, they don't just manage up or solve problems looking up. They look to peers, they look to shop floor associates as well. Now in the Discover Excellence course, we cover these in much greater detail. We talk about them, we should talk about examples, both bad and good. We talk about systems to support both of those principles. It's a short video. This is the theory of cultural enablers, respect every individual, lead with humility, proven by actual practice. Seeing it in action, something an examiner would look for at an organization that understands these principles. Short video.
About 12 million Americans are employed directly in that, but as jobs have increasingly moved
Continue to tumble, and the job outlook is worse. More people are pointing the finger at outsourcing.
plants that work sent their production overseas.
My father bought this Memocraft in 1982. We specialize in stainless steel fabrication and machining. I worked for my dad for 6 years, and then he said, okay, you're ready, take over. How's your day going? From the beginning, I didn't know how to turn the machines on, I didn't know how to fabricate anything, and I don't know how to weld, and so I had to trust everybody around me, because they knew more than I did.
Yeah, you can certainly show me. I'd like to see it.
So, we grew at a very fast clip, and it was very chaotic, and we were delivering some items late to our customers. At that time, it was typically 8 weeks from the moment we get the order until we ship the final product. To stay competitive, we needed to get it to 3 weeks. That's what Toyota Production System is helping us do.
At Toyota, we believe that us helping other companies with our production system will help retain jobs here in the United States. That's going to be more people making money and more people buying stuff. It's going to overall help the economy.
Well, when we heard that Toyota was coming in, we thought, well, here's an auto manufacturer from overseas telling us, you know, this is the way you've got to do things. Everybody was kind of apprehensive about it.
And there was some concern that once we establish some kind of systems where am I going to be kicked out? Am I going to lose my job here?
Prior to working with the company, we have some requirements. One being that no one will lose their job by our activity. I've seen family members, I've seen people that I know very well lose their jobs because their company decided they're going to pick up and move somewhere else. That's devastating. I want to be able to help somebody where that doesn't happen. What we want to think about is if the team member's struggling or there's something we can fix quickly, we need to do that.
Scott came in and he walked us to a training and then we're off.
So we have this overall 18-month schedule, and every month for 3 days, we're going to work in different areas, making improvements. This process is all about people. It's focused around human movement. At the end of the day, we want them to feel better about their jobs.
Toyota started with our shipping operation. To my surprise, they told us that we were disrespecting our employees. And I was just shocked by that. What they taught us is that the leaders of the company are disrespecting their team member if the system isn't flowing perfectly.
The shipping department was pretty much a shambles, so it was fly by the seat of your pants. When Toyota came in, we established a team to work together and present different ideas. Surprisingly enough, it was all very simple stuff. We created shipping lanes so that anybody on my team could walk in and see exactly what we had, when it was due. We taped off a section of our shipping floor the size of our truck, so we would know exactly when we had a full truck of parts. I feel that as a team, we made a huge difference.
It was like a miracle came through.
We typically start shipping and work all the way back to raw materials. We want to be able to touch that entire production line.
There's what we're going to do, team. We're going to run one all the way through.
This week, we're working on a product that used to take days to get finished.
So 6 days. And now we can do this in 6 minutes.
Well, we started 8 weeks, and now we got it down to 5.5 weeks already. It's just a matter of keep doing those small improvements, and we're going to get there.
Through these continuous improvement workshops, we are changing that culture and making it everybody's job. Our goal is to have 116 problem solvers here at ACE. Since we started our work with Toyota, we're getting more orders and more customers. So not only did we not let anybody go, we added 21 people. You know, the whole purpose for our company is not about bending metal. It's really about unleashing potential in people.
I truly love what I do. I still get butterflies when I drive out into the parking lot. I feel part of our family.
We have father, son, mothers, daughters, cousins, and brother-in-laws.
This is my daughter Angela, and she's a value stream leader here. How are we doing, Leo? She will be CEO of this company one day, and she'll be way further than I is today. She's very capable and much smarter than I was at 26 years old. Right? I don't know. Nice compliment.
An example of lead with humility, an example of respect every individual. President of the company involved in the Kaizen event, the 3-day Kaizen event. She said, I didn't know how to turn machines on. I didn't know much about welding when she took over her dad. But she had enough humility and enough confidence to go to the workplace and actually ask people for help. And people offered to help. But they also are trying to, we're not just bending metal here. We're not just welding metal. Her goal is to unleash the power of people. 116 problem solvers is their goal, not delivering faster or bending metal faster. So one example of lead with humility and respect every individual. The second dimension, as a certified instructor or certified facilitator, I thought the improve category, the process category, would be people's sort of wheelhouse, where they really understood certainly the tools and techniques and the principles. But what I've found is people actually struggle in this category for a couple of reasons. They might have been introduced to the tools, but as I mentioned earlier, these are why the tools are needed. It's the why behind the tools. Or the tools are the how to make improvement. These tend to be why we need to make improvement. But also there are 5 principles in this one category. There's 10 total, but 5 here. So we're going to cover them. We certainly cover them deeply in a class, the Improve class. So the first one at the bottom here is seek perfection. Seek perfection is not necessarily, 0 defects. That's a sure quality at the source. Seek perfection is this never-ending pursuit of perfection. The idea that we're going to constantly pursue continuous improvement. We're not going to stop. We're not going to rest on our laurels. It's this never-ending pursuit of improvement. Toyota has a healthy paranoia that their competitors are going to actually pass them. They don't make improvement and quit. A lot of organizations quit too soon. They make superficial improvement and they stop. We call it too happy too soon. Why is it that only 5% of organizations, probably, maybe even less, get to a showcase level or a Shingo prize level versus no prize at all or bronze and silver? Because they need to seek perfection. It's a never-ending pursuit of getting better. Continuous improvement needs to be a normal part of our job, not a special part of our job. Not something we do if nothing else to do, or beginning of the year, or just before an auditor arrives. It's a normal part of our job, and it's forever. I remember the company I worked at many, many years ago. At some point, people started to question whether we were improving too much. Do customers even want better? We're already better than our competitors. Haven't we already improved enough, were some of the comments. Seek perfection says that we're always going to improve. There's always room for improvement, and we should never, ever rest on our laurels. Right? We need to do the work, we need to improve the work. Embrace scientific thinking is the second principle in the improve category. So embrace scientific thinking. There's a scientific method for improvement. Generally follows Plan, Do, Check, Act, PDCA or PDSA. But it's not random, unstructured change. There's a method to it. So scientific method, the systems could be standardized work. It could be a problem-solving system. But there's a scientific method to what we're doing. Making improvement, people want to make improvement. But it shouldn't be shooting darts or guessing. It's not random, unstructured change. There's a method to it. Having said there's a scientific method, there's also some experimentation. So it's not so rigorous that we wouldn't go try something. Lean folks understand we shouldn't sit around a table and debate whether an idea is going to work forever. Let's try it. Let's experiment. Let's check the results. Let's study those results. And then let's act on those results. So there are several systems to help people embrace scientific thinking versus intuition or shooting darts or guessing. Some of my recent work, I've noticed that organizations start with a scientific method, maybe a form to fill out that defines the problem and the stated goal. But when they get to the actions section, they again start to shoot darts at the problem. The train goes off the tracks. So there does need to be a rigorous process for improvement, and then there's certainly tools and techniques to help. Problem solving, standardized work, to name a couple. Focus on process is a focus on the process that we deliver results. A lot of organizations focus too much on the results of the process. They focus too much on quantity, shipments, dollars, and they leave the process up to chance. We hire experienced people to work the process. So this says we need to get better at focusing on the process. Direct observation, one of the first techniques that teams and individuals do in Lean, is a focus on process. It's getting us out of a room like I'm in now to the actual process to see reality. Shingo, the famous consultant at Toyota, whenever he was asked a question about anything related to process, related to results, his immediate answer was, let's go see. That was reality. That was first-hand knowledge. Everything else was second-hand knowledge or bias or opinion. We're not very good at focus on process. We're not good at direct observation. We're not good at studying a process, making improvements to a process. So it's a really important one. And what systems and tools help us get closer to studying the process, to make improvements to a process? We tend to focus on results. We tend to focus on people. Right? We just want to hire more people to work our broken process, or hire other, better, more exceptional people to work our broken process. Deming, quality expert here in America, he said a broken process will beat a good person almost every time. We might win at the game once in a while, but most of the time it beats us. He also said your current process is perfectly designed to give you the results you're getting. The process is designed to give you the results you're getting. It's not a coincidence. So we can hope, wish, and dream we get better results, or we can simply focus on the process. Many tools are geared towards getting us closer to see the process, to understand the process. Value stream mapping, direct observation, 5S, Kanban, all the tools are geared towards improving the process. So let's not focus on results only. Let's not focus on people. Let's focus on the process itself. The fourth principle here under continuous improve is assure quality at the source. Most organizations focus on schedule attainment, volume, meeting a daily rate, meeting an hourly rate, and quality is left up to someone else. Somebody at the end of the line is going to check quality. So how do we assure quality at the source? So stop the line, Jadoka, mistake proofing, zero defects culture, never accept a defect, never make a defect, never pass a defect. You know, in some organizations, I'm the first one saying that we should never pass a defect. We should never accept a defect. But you can say quality is important, but what systems do we have in place that assures quality at the source? So I think Shingo's definition of source was much closer than our general discussion of source. Source for us means give it back to the department, give it back to the individual. Shingo meant much closer than that. He meant the exact source of the defect and to place the protection there. So Jadoka is a really important concept, or intelligent automation, or abnormality detection. And mistake proofing, eliminating defects caused by humans. Defects caused by humans can be brought to zero, completely eliminated. But how does quality work? In many organizations, we sort of shoot the messenger. We pass defects. In many environments, there's no safe means of reporting even because of our legacy quality systems that sort of punish people. You know, verbal, written, you're fired. So people tend to hide their defects, pass their defects. Or maybe it's not even my job to work on quality. That's somebody else's job. But certainly high levels of quality at the source. What systems can we put in place to assure quality at the source? Checklists can help. Poka-yoke can help. Jadoka obviously can help. The last guiding principle in the continuous improved category is flow and pull. So one-piece flow or continuous flow. So the ideal process is value, value, value. Not batch and queue, not nonsensical flow. As an examiner, we can visit an organization and you can see the flow, you can see the path, you can see the value. In an unimproved company, I can't make sense of the flow. It's nonsensical flow. Batch and queue. I see mostly waiting. I don't see hardly any value. So flow is bringing operations closer together, reducing the batch to its lowest level possible, maybe one piece at a time. Pull is used to further synchronize other areas. There's a saying in Lean, flow where you can, pull where you must. So inside a department, it's bringing processes close together, adjacent to one another, set up in a sequence. Inside a department, it's not that hard. It's rearranging the furniture, rearranging the equipment, but getting the process to be literally sequential or adjacent, process adjacency. But you can't connect every step of a process side by side. So the other steps of the process, like the warehouse, like the supplier, like a shared resource, are connected via pull systems. Pull is the opposite of push. Most organizations run push systems, upstream department delivering to downstream without regard of downstream's needs. Separate areas working independently of each other. So pull is used to synchronize. Pull is meant to have every step of a process as a customer, not a supplier. A customer of the previous step. So flow and pull, a little bit tougher concepts for many organizations. But if you think of the opposite of flow and pull, nonsensical flow, no flow, uneven flow, batch and queue, organized by department, push systems, the holy grail of Lean, the purpose of the tools from a process standpoint is one piece flow pull producing to a tack time or a pace, customer demand. One piece flow pull producing to a tack time. So pull or flow, pull, and pace, it's kind of the holy grail of Lean. But this is a big section, 5 principles. Seek perfection, never-ending pursuit. Embrace scientific thinking, a scientific method for improvement, not random unstructured change. Focus on process, not people and results. A good process will yield a good result. Assure quality at the source, not end of line. And lastly, flow and pull. There's a lot there in that one dimension or category. Here's another example of a video that shows some examples of those principles.
What you see here are 2 photographs. One taken in 1914, the other in 2014. One is of Henry Ford's first assembly line in Detroit, Michigan, taken in 1914, which is when he invented the assembly line. The other is 100 years later at a Toyota assembly line. Now, what's remarkable to me as I look at those is how amazingly alike they are. In a way, it's almost the same. If you were to walk by, kind of a drive-by, it's almost the same. What Henry was doing 100 years ago is what Toyota is doing now, which is you take a coil of steel and you stamp it, and then you weld those stamp pieces together into the shape of a shell of a body. Then you paint it, and then you stuff it full of stuff. And to make one car takes somewhere between 10,000 and 30,000 parts, depending on how you count them. And it takes about 1 minute to make a car. And that was true 100 years ago, and it's with Henry Ford, and it's true today with Toyota. Pretty amazing. And if it takes 1 minute to make a car, that means one person is doing about 1 minute's worth of work every 60 seconds. And in 60 seconds, a person is doing maybe 10 or 15 different things. By different things, I mean they're going to walk over and pick up a certain part, component, and perhaps a certain tool, and they're going to attach it to the car. That also is exactly the same way today as it was 100 years ago. But if you look more closely, what you can find is there has been 100 years of innovation inside the work. So Henry Ford did an amazing innovation 100 years ago to come up with the assembly line. And then cars, the products themselves have changed dramatically in that time. But also inside the work, there's been tremendous innovation. And that is what we have to thank lean thinking and practice for. So this illustration shows what's going on inside an assembly line today, as developed by Toyota and now copied by all the other manufacturers in the industry and many other industries as well. So not all of us work on an assembly line, and we all have that image in mind of Charlie Chaplin working and being worked by the assembly line, or maybe Lucy with the chocolates on the assembly line that she worked on. But what's happening in this assembly line, if the individual is working on a car, and as you can see, they have about 60 seconds to do the job. You can see where it says beginning of the work, and you can see where it says the end, and that's about 60 seconds. You can also see that the person is working on the back of this car, and you can tell that they're having a problem. You can tell that by the furrowed brow, and that's at the 40-second mark. So that's interesting already. That's a big difference already between what's happening on a Toyota or a lean assembly line today versus what Henry Ford gave us 100 years ago. Henry said, what I want of you workers is your hands, not your heads. And I want you to keep working, the assembly line never stops. In this case, the worker sees that they have a problem, and they were able to actually detect the problem, and now they know what to do, which is reach up overhead and pull a cord. They don't have to look for the cord is right there. And then the worker also knows what's going to happen next, which is someone is going to come help them determine what to do about this problem that's occurred, and they're going to provide that help within the job cycle. That's an amazing thing. You're going to have hundreds of workers on this assembly line. Each of them may be having a problem at any given moment, and now they're able to signal whenever they have a problem. They're able to make sure that the problem they've occurred, perhaps is a defect, will not escape their zone, never pass on a defect. So what I've done now is I've asked each worker to be an inspector. I've asked each worker not just to do the work I've given them as a mindless robot, but to look for things gone wrong. So when I give that 10 or 15 things for the worker to do, their standardized work, I'm asking them not just to do it over and over and keep the line running. I'm asking them to find things gone wrong and look for improvements. So this worker now is engaging their mind and finding things and exercising their human creativity, the talents to be able to make improvements. And I didn't just passively ask the person to do that. I'm giving them the skills. I'm giving them a job that is user-friendly to begin with, so they can do the job successfully most of the time, and they know how to spot a problem. They know how to spot a problem, which is anything that gets in the way of them successfully doing their work in 60 seconds. And they know exactly what to do once they found a problem, which is to signal that a problem is there, to contain and notify. And they know what's going to happen next, which is someone is going to come and help decide what to do. Is this a problem that we need to deal with right now? What is going on? Shall we stop the line? And in fact, if they don't solve the problem between that 40-second mark and the 60-second mark, the line will actually stop. So what Toyota did is turn on its head the roles and responsibilities that Henry had put in place. Henry Ford said to the production workers, you just build, you just guarantee the quantity, never let the production line stop. Someone at the end who's smarter than you and more well paid than you are, they will look and fix anything that's gone wrong, or they may just decide to ship it anyway. What lean thinking says is I want you, everyone doing production work, to own the quality. Make sure that every single job you do is done perfectly. You now own the quality that's going to go to the customer, which is the following process in addition to the final customer. So in that way, I want to engage your hearts and minds in building perfect quality and making continuous improvements. So on the surface, 1914 to 2014 looks almost the same. Underneath it is endless, continuous innovations to the work. It is this innovation to the work that makes things better for everyone involved. Makes things better for the worker, makes things better for the company, it makes things better for the final customer as well. That's what lean thinking and practice is all about, and that's why we like to start with the work, to make better work for the people who do it.
So an example of all these principles. On the surface, they look the same. but 100 years of seeking perfection, 100 years of innovation. Very different. Certainly focus on process, embrace scientific thinking, assure quality at the source, stop, defect zone, pull the cord. That's Jidoka, automation, intelligent automation. It's abnormality detection, and certainly flow and pull. But a good example of all of these principles in place, and this is the why behind the tools and techniques that you saw in that example. So there's two final categories, three final principles, and a couple of final comments that I'd like to make. This next category is called enterprise alignment. When I first showed this triangle, it was purpose. So enterprise alignment in general, or create constancy of purpose, is an unwavering clarity as to why the organization exists. What is it that we do? It might be our mission and our vision. But all organizations understand why the organization exists. And there are some organizations that do this extremely well. They connect all employees to the customer and to what service or product they provide. Other organizations don't make it clear or leave it up to chance, think it's somewhat obvious. But it's an unwavering commitment to why the organization exists and to what we do, and obviously to improve that service or that product. But it's more than that. It's also the goals of the company. What are the goals of the company? What's that 3 to 5 year plan, and what's this year's annual plan? But more importantly, the goals, what are the means to achieve those goals? Organizations are pretty good at setting goals. But more importantly, how are we going to achieve those goals? The means to achieve those goals. So there's a fair amount around policy deployment or a strategy for the organization or a strategy for lean. As an examiner, whether it be a Shingo Prize site visit or any other customer visit that I might do, an initial assessment, maybe a gap analysis, during that site visit, I'll ask employees if they can recite a goal of the organization. And most organizations can. Some employees do struggle. But most employees can just recite a goal or two, some of them quicker than others. But the follow-up question is, are you involved in anything in your department? Or are you aware of any projects? Or have you made any improvements to help the company achieve that goal? In a Shingo Prize winning company, all employees would not only be able to recite the goals, but be actively involved or be aware of a project or more than one project to help the company achieve the goal. So why do we exist? What are the goals? What are the means to achieve that goals? How do we align? How do we cascade those goals throughout the organization to connect everybody? And there's certainly tools to do that. Think systemically is a systemic view, I mean. So it's a broader picture. It's not in isolation. So I understand the up and down implications of change, all the way from customer supplier, maybe the upstream department, the downstream department. But it's a systematic view or a systemic view. So there's two principles here. I have an example of an organization, a video example of an organization that absolutely has this clarity to why the organization exists. And this comes directly from the Shingo Prize material. Another short video clip.
Here at Autoleave, understand that we are in the perfection business. And we get paid for saving lives. We make life-saving devices that every day are the difference between someone being able to walk away from an accident and maybe not so. And so when we look at what drives improvement, we need to look at sustainable improvement, because we're talking about perfect performance every day. And every day we challenge ourselves to be better than we were the day before. How do you do that? You do that by reaching deep into people and by linking with values that drive their behavior. And the basis for those kind of values are principles. We try to grab one of those principles and we embody it in our motto that we save lives. Every day we come to work and we save lives. We're in a very tough business. In the automotive business, if you don't improve, you don't exist. With every person that comes in that door, we have these multi-dimensional capabilities. And our job as management is to create and sustain the environment that fosters those abilities to be expressed as improvement ideas, expressed as them developing their workplace so that it is owned by them. Now, in a role as one of our top managers, my job is that we keep focusing on those things that will sustain our ability to add value over time in a better way. In business schools, you might be told, you have to drive lower cost by lower overhead or lower labor costs or lower material costs. Well, all those are great, but you don't do those directly. You do those through investing and raising the skill and the ability of your people. And if you do that and do it well, then they do all those things and they do them better than you would know how to do because it's their house. It's their job and they do it very well. So as management at Autoliv, our job is to hold up those principles that sustain their behavior on a daily basis. And as we do that, as we are seeking perfection through employing their ideas every day in the workplace, by showing that we trust them, by implementing their ideas, we are then in a position to accomplish the goals of the business. Save more lives every day by implementing the ideas of our people. And by doing that, we all win. You can operate in the short term by just pursuing results. And you can get results in the short term, but it's a sugar high. It doesn't last. It's not sustainable. And so what it degenerates into is a program. Just another program. But the way we do it, through investing in our people and sustaining the culture that we have, by doing that, we invest in our future. We invest in the future of our people, and we grasp that future and make it our own. Basing improvement on principles is a long-term perspective. It is looking beyond the horizon. Basing improvement on anything other than principles is by its very nature finite. It cannot sustain itself in the long term. I measure success by the light in their eyes. When you see the spirit through the eyes, and that spirit is dynamic and vibrant and on fire, what else do you need to see?
Shingo Prize recipient organization, and certainly some discussion on why the organization exists, the importance of why the organization exists, connecting all employees. The final category, the final principle, is a results category. And this one's about the customer, but it's also about the measures. You know, results are important. Organizations exist to deliver results. They exist for a lot of other reasons too. But are we providing value to our customer? So the voice of the customer, hearing from the customer, a net promoter score, surveys, there's a lot of tools and techniques where we can sort of gauge where we stand with the customer. There's also business results, so organizational, departmental, or project set of results, so metrics. The Shingo Model guidelines have a long list of metrics, some that are strongly recommended, so quality, cost, delivery, some other interesting metrics, such as profitability or premium freight or inventory turns. So there's a long list of metrics that should be reported. Now, the goals of continuous improvement shouldn't be just bottom line results. You know, it's a little bit insincere to do it because we want numbers or profitability only. But it's certainly a part of the equation. Right? We're doing it for customers, and results are a part of it. It takes a while for it to hit a company metric, but in the end, it's bottom line measurable results. So there are 10 principles in 4 different categories. The principles are the why behind the system. They help develop and align systems, develop tools in order to achieve results. The focus in the past was too tools focused in order to get results. Tools are still important to deliver those KPIs. But as you can hear from the material, there's a greater emphasis on principles and culture and behavior, key behaviors. As examiners, we're taught to look for those behaviors of a leader, manager, or associate. Is that tool or technique meaningful, purposeful? Do people understand why we're doing it in the first place? So a couple of final points. You know, in the actual courses, we cover this material in a much greater depth. This is a short overview. O.C. Tanner, another Shingo Prize recipient. So Gary Peterson will share how they explain the principles and how they choose systems and tools for all employees as part of their organizational system. They're aligned to the model.
This is our strategy wall, and it helps communicate the way we show our people what really matters and what they can do to contribute to the overall well-being of the company. And it all starts with the principle statements. These are the principles that we've gotten from the Shingo model, which means an awful lot to us. We put them up here in the white words, and these are the principles that our people really connect with. Lead with humility, respect every individual, assure quality at the source, seek perfection, create constancy of purpose, those kind of ideas. These are bedrock for us. And in the black letters here, we've kind of written a description of what we mean by the principle. And I'm convinced that you go on the floor, you talk to any employee here, I don't know that they necessarily rattle off the principles, but you talk to them about respecting individuals, they'll know what you're talking about, and they'll feel about it the way that we've written about it here. And we try to reinforce this because again, we find this is foundational to all of the things that happen. So having the principles, then we decide, well, what is it that we need to have in place in the teams, on the floor, throughout our organization, so that we can support these principles. And that's where we come up with the systems, creating the systems. Like we have a coaching and training system. Not surprisingly, the coaching and training supports this idea of respecting individual. It teaches people how to embrace scientific thinking. It helps them understand the importance of seeking perfection. It reinforces constancy of purpose. All the different systems help us accomplish the principles. That's why they exist. So what we try to accomplish with the systems is to make sure that everybody to whom the system applies knows exactly what to do and how to do it. We reinforce these systems through what we call a Gemba assessment. And this card is our Gemba assessment card. Everybody who is not direct labor on a regular basis, week to week, randomly draws a card, goes to the place indicated on the card. In this case, they're going to cycle counters, the cycle counters area. So this might be a production facilitator who's now going to the cycle counters and specifically is going to look at the coaching system with the cycle counters. And they'll go through these questions and determine whether the cycle counters passed or failed the Gemba assessment. Each team has a place in their team for their cards to be posted throughout the week. They have a log of how are they doing, and then they address those in their team meeting. Here's the things that we did well on, here's the things we didn't do well on, how do we fix that? But you know, this is really not so much about enforcing systems, because I'm more interested in people doing it because they want to do it for the right reason. What's really cool about this is it gets people out of their area someplace else. I have to go visit shipping and cons. I need to go to the GEMS team. I have to go to the yellow team, and so forth. I have to go to reverse logistics. And by going there, I have to talk to people and ask them questions. And in doing so, I better understand the systems because I see how someone else is using these systems. And I really think all of that reinforces the principles.
So, brief overview of the Shingo material. And the Shingo Institute has the Shingo Prize, as I spoke about, a couple examples here in Autoliv and OC Tanner. And they also have educational material. Now, the educational material was not a part of the Institute initially. It was developed later on. There are 5 courses, and these are full day, or actually 2 full day courses. So Discover Excellence is the course that I'm sharing briefly with you today. It's kind of a prerequisite to all of them. It covers a little bit on each. In subsequent courses, we delve deeper into each category. So as the cultural enablers, this is all about people. Respect every individual, lead with humility. So we're looking at some of the systems that Gary just spoke about. We're looking for behavior around those 2 principles. All of these courses are structured where day 1, morning of day 1 is kind of review and kind of covering the principles. In some of them in that first day in the afternoon or on day 2, there's go to Gemba visits. There's 2 workplace visits, Gemba being the place where the work is done. Where we take a principle, just like Gary said, and we'll look for systems in place, but we're also looking for an understanding of the system and how it can impact behavior or how it's matched to a principle. So Continuous Improve is a long course. It's got 5 principles, and it's been changed more recently to a 3-day course. It was always a 2-day course. Enterprise alignment and results are combined into one course. So those last 2 dimensions or categories, the alignment, purpose, strategy, means to achieve the goals, and the results the organization is getting is in one course. And lastly, Build Excellence. Build Excellence is more of a strategy to execution. This is a newer course. People have taken these courses and said, okay, now what? These ones focus on principles, systems, tools, culture, behavior. This one is more of a strategy to look at your own organization and to be able to do what an examiner might do is to analyze existing systems and to develop a strategy to actually improve them, to transform the organization from where it is now to where it wants to go by understanding the principles and the systems. So there are 5 courses. The courses have many different quotes spread out throughout them. So there's a nice mix of lecture and video. They're actually highly participative. This particular overview is mostly me talking to the camera or me talking to a few people in the room. The courses are actually lots and lots and lots of breakout discussions, team activity. The rooms are filled with charts at the end of the day or the 2-day period. There's a feedback to the host site. GBMP offers these courses both privately and publicly. But the course also has videos, it has quotes spread out throughout from thought leaders from the past. This one, obviously, from E.G. Toyota, is pegged to respect every individual. Employees are offering a very important part of their lives to us, and if we don't use their time effectively, we're essentially wasting their lives. So a lot of really good quotes spread out throughout the lecture portion or the academic portion. So one of the last sections I want to share with you today is there are 30 licensed affiliates around the country, around the world actually, who are teaching these 5 courses. And the Shingo Institute looks to the affiliates who have experience, actual practical experience, to not only teach the courses, but to offer real-world examples of systems, tools, of behaviors that are both kind of right or sort of traditional. So we understand that Shingo Institute training is a significant investment in both time and financial, but there is obviously a compelling value that this short overview presentation has shared. But before selecting an affiliate, we think there's 12 criteria to consider. So knowledge, how long has the organization been an affiliate? How long have you been associated with the institute and in what capacity? Are any of the facilitators examiners? Are all of the facilitators examiners? How long have they been an examiner? Do they have a model of implementation? Have they demonstrated Lean and Six Sigma capability to actually help organizations? Do they provide a gap analysis? A gap analysis, a Shingo examiner or a Lean consultant will come out and look at the organization and provide a written report of how they're doing against the Shingo model. So a gap analysis is another criteria that some organizations offer, some don't, or some affiliates offer. Have they coached organizations to winning the prize, to be recognized by the prize? Do they have, what industry do they come from? Are they from manufacturing? Are they from healthcare? Have they spent many, many years in one of those industries? Do they have specific knowledge? Which is one of the reasons why the Shingo Institute has gone to affiliates, because they want to make sure the affiliates have industry experience versus just academic experience. There's a few other factors. Have anybody at their affiliate been a recipient of the prize? Are there other professional recognitions that the affiliate or their facilitators have, such as AME, SME, ASQ? But what other professional or member group recognition has the affiliate have? How many certified instructors do they have? Is it just one or two, or do they have 5 or 6? So training your team should not be limited by the amount of resources the affiliate has. Do they offer coaching and mentoring, or where did they receive their personal coaching and mentoring? Me personally, I've learned from many, but the best was working closely with Toyota, TSSC, Toyota Supplier Support Center. And what other additional services do they provide? Do they have anything else to offer, such as an annual conference? So pricing is somewhat flexible. The pricing has been set by the Shingo Institute. So they're per seat basis, but it depends on location and travel and size of group. So if it's regional and local, pricing can be a little bit better because there's not travel. If the room is filled with people, then the price can be adjusted a bit. There's minimal amounts that we can charge, but there's some flexibility. So those are 12 factors, and I can certainly send this 2-page document to anybody that wants it, or everybody that's both live streaming and here in the room. But thank you. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you had some fun. I hope the videos were good. If you have any questions, you can please contact GBMP. If you're interested in a gap analysis or another overview presentation for others, please contact GBMP. My name is Dan Fleming. My contact information is here, but it's also on our website. Do you have any questions in this room? Anybody? Thank you, everybody.